Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. As you all know, I'm Zorarcane, and today we're going to look at the leaks for Genestealer Cult's new Codex, which popped up on Reddit earlier. I figured I'd jump on this issue nice and quick because there's actually quite a lot to cover. Now, ironically, just last night I was recording an upcoming short with fellow cult player The Sandman, whose channel you should definitely check out. I'll provide a link in the description. We were literally just talking about this topic, thinking about the rumoured Codex release and all the stuff that we think needs to change and perhaps how it might happen. I also did a video on this myself a few months ago, a sort of wish list compilation. So it's very interesting to see how some of those supposed leaks, align with my ideas and suggestions. Now, just a forewarning, this is all going off a totally unverified source. There's no way to know how accurate these points are, but to be fair, often you can just tell if something carries any weight. Now, a lot of them certainly make sense to me. Not that I may agree with them or feel like they're a good change, but that brings me on to a big point here. It's very easy to get all doom and gloom if you see changes that might not seem great. So I think it's important to stay optimistic and just assume that things may turn out to be much better than we first perceive. As let's face it, we're not going to see the full picture until the Codex actually drops. For example here, right off the bat, it seems like Cult Ambush and our blip system is going to be completely reworked, which immediately sets off alarm bells ringing in my head. I mean, this is a pretty long list compared to what the Custodes are built for, but then again, Custodes already work pretty well as a faction. I don't even think they really needed a new Codex just yet. They're already competitive, and it doesn't take a genius to field them with a decent amount of success. With Genestealer cults, on the other hand, it's fair to say that we really were in need of an overhaul. Games Workshop had a big decision in front of them here. Do they stick with the rules they created originally and expand on them and tweak them and streamline them, along with maybe a load of buffs to just shunt us up the ladder a bit? Or do they break down the core faction mechanics and start afresh? I would hazard a guess it's probably going to be the latter in many cases. Sure, I absolutely love using my Cult Ambush blips and all the tactics associated with them, but if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, one could argue that they are a time-consuming, complicated, and overall a convoluted addition to an already tricksy army. You can just picture the staff pitch meeting where they sat down and said, right, let's strip all the fat from this codex and make it leaner and, well, hopefully meaner. So let's tackle these ideas with an open mind and don't just forget, give them the benefit of the doubt. We don't know the full picture on any of these, so essential details could really be, the making of them. I'm not going to lie, some of these changes are going to render my old videos very outdated, and like hell am I re-recording them. I guess I'll just have to post a warning that they're now full of old rule advice, but never mind. So starting at the top of the list, one that we have already touched on. No more ambush markers. Full rework of the Cult Ambush system. Personally, no matter what I say about keeping an open mind, this would make me a very, very sad panda. This ability alone is what allows us to get optimal positioning, to keep our guys out of the line of fire, and let's not forget about all the cool forward deployment tricks that I always promote using the Goliath trucks and shit like that. It allows us to modify our tactics on the fly, and in general, it just fucks with the enemy's battle plan so well. But more than anything, this is like our USP. This is our jam. We brought this stuff to the table, and immediately our opponents just go, oh shit, I have no idea how to deal with this. And that's what's cool, really cool. It makes us feel individual, which is part of the reason that I think most of us choose this faction in the first place. Genestealer Cult attracts the sort of players who want to be different. By stripping out these unique abilities, we get closer to the rest of the sheep, and that hurts. So what I'm sincerely hoping here is that even if we do lose the red blips, that they're replaced by something equally as cool and faction defining. So let's keep our fingers crossed. And now the next few points are kind of tied up with this, so let's go over them. It says here, basic ambush is now a simple deep strike, but you can mod it with characters. I'm not really sure what to make of that. Maybe it means that we'll be able to deep strike in turn 1. That would certainly be unique, but as I've said in my videos before, deep striking is hard to make work these days. I guess this could be Games Workshop trying to make us that faction again. And the next point, perfect ambush and lying in wait are gone. Honestly, I think they were relics of 8th edition anyway, so I'm happy for them to be replaced. They were very CP hungry and could be done so much better using baked in rules, cult creeds or datasheet abilities. For example, I'm skipping ahead a few points here, but it says the Saboteur, which is rumoured to be our new character model, and that can allow a unit to pop up within 3 inches of the enemy. And that's what lying in wait does. So exactly what I mean by transferring that ability to a datasheet. What I'm seeing here is exactly like I said, a streamlining effect. We all know that whilst 9th edition can be pretty complex in some ways, they've also been making a conscious effort to make the game faster to play. The board sizes got smaller, the points of individual models went up, and therefore army lists got smaller overall in the hopes that the game gets quicker. And I can understand that. I just hope that it doesn't come at the expense of us losing that diversity. So let's move on. The Primus, letting you deploy 3 units per game 3 inches closer. This seems really odd. I'm going to guess that it's an example of something we don't know the full extent of, because moving some units a measly 3 inches is like probably the most pathetic thing I've ever heard. I'm aware, for example, Necrons often have a pre-game move. I've had that used against me quite a lot of times. But it always seems very unexciting. Maybe for them, a bit of extra speed is great, but we're already really fast, so 3 inches is like a bit insulting, to be honest. Maybe this is Games Workshop's way of addressing our deploy outside the line tricks with the red blips. If so, I'd say it's a very poor stand-in. The Alphas, giving concealed positions to Jackal units. Now this is interesting. I brought this point up in my wishlist video, saying that it seemed bizarre a faction like Genestealer can't deploy infiltrators, starting in the middle of the board like scouts would do. We're the ambush specialists, so it makes perfect sense to me, although it does seem strange to give it to the bikers rather than infantry. You could be popping out of tunnels and sewers in terms of the lore. I mean, they'll certainly be getting in close range first turn if you deploy them this way. Let's see if jackals become more deadly themselves, and if so, this new rule could be a decent change, because right now I think they're just a bit whiffy. They might get into combat, but then what are they going to do when they get there? Saboteur. Now, I already covered him briefly. He's rumoured to be the new character, and I mean, we don't really need more characters in the first place. Our codex is packed full of them, disproportionately so, but I'll reserve judgment until we see what he's actually capable of. It says he grants the 3-inch deep strike to the units, which has long been a great stratagem in the form of line and weight, allowing us to snag primary objectives from right under the opponent's nose. It's an excellent way to swing the primary score balance. So if this guy lets us do it without the need for CP, I'm all here for that. I just hope that it's not a one-time deal throughout the game. I'd want him to be able to do it again and again, so it's really useful. I'm thinking, does he have to pop up with the unit that he grants that deep strike to? Time will tell. Next, the Nexus can redeploy 3 units after the first turn roll. So I mentioned him in my wishlist video too. His abilities needed to be buffed. And I think this is exactly what I had in mind. Because if Cool Ambush gets removed, this will become absolutely essential. Again, I'd want to see him have another ability, because without it, he's basically just around to do a single trick at the start of the game, and he's useless from that point forwards. I mean, obviously he can, regenerate CP for you, but I tend to find that you never get enough CP to make that worthwhile. Okay, this is the big one. The Patriarch, the Pure Strains, and vehicles getting access to the cool creeds. No mention of Brew Brothers, though. But anyway, this is really what we were hoping for. So, we should have had them in the first place, but regardless, now things can get tasty. So let's break it down, assuming the creeds won't have further caveats. Obviously, the vehicles, getting them means buffing durability if you go Bladed Cog or Rusted Claw. So they'll either be gaining an invuln, like the trucks, that is what they've always needed, or in Rusted Claw's case, they could get a 3+ save against small arms fire. That's still pretty nice. It's a big buff for Bladed Cog, but it gets real tasty when you look at the Genestealers. So remember that the Patriarch himself is classed as a Genestealer, so this will apply to him. Again, Bladed Cog could be putting their invuls up to 4, and that is seriously cool. So, looks like Pure Strains are back on the menu, boys. But then, before my loyalties are swayed over, let's think of the alternative. Twisted Helix Genestealers, +2 advance. We're suddenly looking at a bug that moves 8 inches and then advances up to another 8. I've been fantasizing about this possibility for a long time. That's some serious speed, especially if you throw in a Clamavus too. And then you could combine that with the Primus's new ability, the little pre-game move thing, perhaps. You'll be almost always up in the enemy's front line without using the red blip tricks on the trucks. And that's not even considering the strength buff of this creed now, which would finally get them up to 5. Actually, wait, hold up. I'm going to skip over a few points on the list here. It says that Rending Claws are now +1 strength anyway, so that means that everything Twisted Helix will be a base strength 6 with those claws, and that is crazy. And for the record, 2 flat damage if you roll a wound roll of 6 too. I mean, mutagenic deviation is going to be crazy as a combo and a force multiplier there. If you don't know, this psychic power gives +1 to the wound roll, so any 5s become 6s. That's going to be a load of flat damage too. So yeah, I'm hyped for that. Before we go on here, I may as well cover the other parts about the pure strains. It says they will just get an upgraded 4 attacks, so that's ditching the rule, which states they have to have a gang of 10 or more. I think it's called Flurry of Claws, which would mean that otherwise they would stay at 3. So that's awesome. It means now we can run them effectively in small gangs of 5 while staying at full combat capacity. These guys are really going to come back hard. I can smell it. It would be nice if they got a new kit too, because the old one is really showing its age. It's a little bit 2006-y in my eyes, but never mind. On the other point here, regarding the Patriarch, monstrous Rending Claws no longer reroll to wound, but +2 strength, and I think it means D3 or flat 4 damage depending on what you roll for the wound. So hopefully I read that part right. It could mean maybe flat 3 going up to flat 4 damage, which, as you know, is currently possible using Bioalchemist. Now, this bit I do find is a big problem, because rerolling failed wounds with these claws made him hugely dangerous, because not only did it prevent you from flopping your attacks, but it also meant you had more chance of rolling 6s on the second attempt round, and thus more chance of the huge flat damage. I would consider this a downgrade, despite the strength buff, which I think would make him 8, so, you know, that's very crumpy, but I know what I would prefer. I suppose the fact that it's flat 4 damage regardless of needing Twisted Helix's Warlord trait would be very nice. I'm just curious if that would remain, and then you could stack it, allowing me to get flat damage 5 maybe. Maybe they'll change it, who knows. Maybe they'll make it so one of the Warlord traits allows him to reroll the wounds. But anyway, let's go back up the list a bit and cover the things we missed out on. Oh, here's a big one. Big problem in my eyes. Unquestioning loyalty now acts like bodyguards. And by this, I assume they mean that the characters cannot be targeted in any way by shooting attacks if a bodyguard unit is side by side with them. This has been a huge topic of debate, especially recently in 9th, where people have been using it in really gamey ways, you know, hiding the bodyguards out of sight, but the characters out in the open, resulting in some stupid situations where you can't target either of them. Honestly, I'm not a fan of it in the slightest. And I love our old loyalty rule. It's one of our hidden gems. It keeps my characters alive in all the best ways, and it really plugged that durability hole for them. But most of all, it was fucking cinematic. I also love doing the slow motion dive in front of the Patriarch with his minions. You know, this could be a major loss of a well-balanced individual and creative rule, and I'll be very sad to see it go. Now, the Metamorph getting AP -2 on his guns. It's a very simple but necessary change. His guns were just not deadly enough. Strength 5 would have been better in my eyes, but the AP really does help. -2, you know, is just enough. One thing I would like to see is that his Oppressor's Bane Relic upgrades all 3 pistols rather than just one of the 3. That's always really annoyed me, and it bugged me, and just for that fact alone I would never take it. Next one, the Locust Stick, negating charge bonuses in an aura. Now this seems a bit weird. I assume it means that enemies charging us won't get charge buffs when he's around, and that seems very situational. I honestly don't know a great deal of units who even get charge buffs in the first place. Perhaps if he just gave a flat -2 to a charge aura against enemy units, that would make more sense. Either way, this guy needed something to make him more useful, and I'm not sure if this is what I would have gone for, but let's wait and see. Seismic cannon buffs. So it looks like the long wave is going up to 2 damage and the short wave up to 3 damage, and that is very nice and much needed. I can certainly see this getting more play, you know, rather than the mining lasers now. Personally, I think the seismic weapons look far better than the mining lasers anyway. Visually, the design is just so much better, so I'm all here for that. Another gun upgrade, the Weber getting buffed. Now, this doesn't make sense to me, though. It says it's going up to Assault D6. Well, that would make it identical to the Flamer. So I think this point is sketchy at best. Maybe the range will remain higher, but overall, there's probably a part we're not seeing here. Okay, here's a good one. The Metamorph Claw buffs. Apparently, it's going to take on the same profile as a Power Fist, which, as you know, is usually ×2 strength and flat damage 2, which is very tasty. They'll probably still have a -1 to hit, but you could counteract that with a Primus. It'd be like having a melee gang equivalent that spits out 30, 40, maybe 50 or more overcharged plasma shots. Well, I mean, like a close combat variant anyway. It's a buff that I didn't see coming, to be honest, which could really switch up the way these guys see play. I'm definitely eager to see how it works out. Aberrants might feel a bit left out if the Metamorphs can deal that kind of damage now. Okay, here's a sad one. Familiars. I'm definitely upset about this. I love using the familiars because they allow you to tank damage and stuff. Like, you know, you've got incoming fire or whatever that hits your Patriarch, and let's say it's D6 and they get a 6. Instead of that going onto the Patriarch or going onto Unquestioning Loyalty, you could sink it into a familiar and just piss them off. But I will wholeheartedly admit that the rule was in a very broad grey area that desperately needed clarifying. It says they will no longer exist as characters, much in the same way that some Imperium squads get access to like an ammo run style token. I think the Sisters of Battle get like a Morium Cherub thing. So this is indeed a big downgrade. No more hidden bodyguard ability. It does say here that they lend an ability and a weapon. No clue what they're going to be. So whatever it is, let's hope it's good. Lastly, the Aberrants. Now this part was to be expected because like the Pure Strains, these boys were gathering dust on most cult players' shelves and desperately needed to be either reduced in points or made worthwhile. So I'm going to guess that they'll stay expensive but get very beefy. And it says here, coincidentally, that they'll go up to toughness 5. Indeed, just like I guessed, that's going to mirror that orky feel, but also going up to 3 attacks. I think that makes 5-man squads a little more viable, whereas in the past I always liked the max size of 10 for like that ultimate smash. I felt like 5 just didn't have the raw power required, and when handing out buffs like Might from Beyond, or the Bioficus's injections, or the Fight Again stratagems, or the Feel No Pain stratagem, I really wanted to make sure I was maximising what I got out of them for the CP investment. But anyway, let's not forget that those injections can buff their toughness again, so we could see them going up to toughness 6. That's an awkward level of durability which certain opponents will start to struggle with. It's not uncommon to be able to deal with toughness 5, but 6 is like that, you know, small vehicle level, the turning point where you start to consider actual anti-tank weapons instead of standard attacks. Lastly, under the same point is the Daddy Aberrant, the Abominant. It says here he'll get that much needed weapon skill buff, so he'll be 2+, so his Sledgehammer will be hitting on 3s, and the same upgrade to his attacks and toughness too. So I'm very happy with this, exactly what the Doctor ordered. I mean, hell, if you injected this guy with the goad, he could be toughness 7, that's hard as nails. I really hope he still gets the ability to fight off smaller models with his like Rending Claw, perhaps like a fixed allocation, you know, make 2 additional attacks with this or whatever. One can only hope. He's over 110 points if I remember correctly, so he has to be made worth it or at least come down. If that happens, I can see myself really wanting to hark back to that classic double GSC detachment with all the tasty characters thrown in like I used to. Near the end of 8th, I was running the Broodcoven plus the Icon Ward plus the Abominant plus the Bioficus and the Clamavus for this maximum power combo powerhouse of aberrant buffing. I'm not going to lie, it's not the best way to do things, but it'd be great fun to be able to do that again with some degree of competitiveness, and I'd just be happy to see that happen. No mention here of any changes to the Creed themselves. I won't lie, it does scare me thinking that Twisted Helix might lose their strength buff, because let's always remember that the Rending Claws are going to be +1 strength themselves now anyway. Let's keep fingers crossed on that point. Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor will definitely get reworked. As I said in my video with Sandman, perhaps we'll get some kind of super doctrine that allows us to always get +1 to charge out of deep strike, similar to the Blood Angels. That will be very in keeping with our original strategies. So that's all for today. All of this talk has made me very reluctant to do more videos until the Codex actually comes out, assuming of course that we do get it in December, like the rumours suggest. That could be absolute bollocks in itself still, and all of these supposed leaks could also be total nonsense, but who knows. I'm going to stay optimistic and keep pumping out some other tactics, maybe some generic playstyle tips or something like that. Anyway, thanks for watching and leave some comments, guys. Also, big thanks to anyone who passes around my videos on Reddit and other cult sources. I really appreciate that. Keep it up.